Welcome to the Don't Let the Smile Fool You podcast, where we're talking about everything happening beneath the smile as you climb the leadership ladder. Let's go. Welcome back. I cannot wait to get to part two of our conversation with Lucy Quist. In part one, we talked about what does it take, right? What happens when you first come into the organization, your toolkit, how to establish yourself and set yourself apart. Now, in part two, we dive a bit deeper. And the conversation is about what happens when you get to the top, that CEO role. What happens when the pressure starts to mount and you're really having to prove yourself over and over again. And how Lucy, at some point, decided to step away, rebuild, and reinvent herself. This is a really good conversation. Let's dive in.
More than ever, I think women don't only want to be successful on paper and in their pockets and in their community, they want to be significant. They want the journey they've been on to matter beyond themselves. And what that means is that to live a journey that matters means that you make an impact that goes beyond yourself, beyond your personal benefit. And I think many of us are reaching this point and having to make this call and decision. Now, when I reached this point, I didn't have all the words that I'm giving you now for it. I didn't fully understand. And this was, almost 2 years ago. And I just made a decision. I just stepped away. I just, because I'd spent probably over a year trying to figure it out, trying to trying to really understand what was going on with me. And I just reached a point where I realized that while I didn't have the answers, I just couldn't continue as is. And I was going to have to step away and create some answers for myself, which is a really strange thing for me to do naturally because we've always been taught about it's the next plan, it's the next plan. And I still believe that people should have forward going plans for plans that take them forward for the next job. So imagine having to get to a point and admit to myself, I don't fully know the plan, but I also know that the current cannot persist. So I encourage anyone who's listening, especially women, you need to always be thinking forward into your plans of what to do next, where you're going. Don't think about just what's in front of you. So I did step away and I spent a lot of time talking to people, reading a lot. I did podcasts, listening. I joined webinars, and there's several that are so informative and helped me understand better. There's one called it's a Stanford professor, and he talks about power, and he interviews all these kind of people on power. What I found fascinating is the difference between, again, men and women and how we use power and how we view power, to the point where sometimes as women we even feel it's bad to say we're powerful and that we have power. But
Yes, yes, yeah.
the whole takeaway was me having to step back and repackage and rethink about career and personal life and all aspects of my life and what I wanted them to mean from not just a success point of view, but from a significance point of view. And this has really has not only refocused me, but given me a level of joy and commitment to do the things I do outside of the workplace, not just in the workplace. An example being what I'm doing with the Bold New Normal. It's given me that platform for the significance that I think is really important, that when I reach the end of my life and I look back, I want it to be something that I am able to say it made an impact significantly in people's lives. And I think more women, I suspect, maybe not think, but I suspect more women go through this experience than men.
Yeah, I was so I think in the last 2 years, I've had maybe 5 or 6 women who were chiefs, right, or very senior in their organizations, walk away from their jobs. They're just like, this is, I can't, I cannot do another day here as is. And it's not as if these are highly ambitious women. Obviously, they've reached this level. But I think for many of them, they wanted their work to matter more. So this wasn't about, I don't have work-life balance. It was
It's
nothing
not
like
that.
it's nothing like that. It's just around, you know, you, how do you show up every day in an organization where you just don't feel that you're making enough of a difference, and that you're also being fulfilled in that role? So, yeah, I had 5 or 6 women who, over the last 24 months, left. Either mutually or just decide to resign, and went into a completely
Yes.
different direction. So I think, to your point, which is around, always sort of reevaluating what forward movement looks like
Yeah.
for you, right? Because I think we are also trained, especially women of my generation, that it's always got to be the next biggest thing, and
No, that's not always forward motion.
that's not always forward motion. Um, so can we? I know you've talked about it a bit in your podcast, but perhaps we can talk about it here as well. So, what did that year out look like for you in terms of reinvention? You talked about the fact that you talked to a lot of people, and you sort of reevaluated what was important to you. What came up and out of that process in
Oh
terms
yeah.
of, yeah, what came up and out of that
Yeah.
process in
So
terms of,
so
yeah.
I'll go through it a bit more detail, but the biggest thing that came out was fear. As in left
Mm.
me was fear. Because part of the reason why we persist in enduring situations that we know are not right for
Hmm.
us is that we're afraid.
I'll say this again. Let me
But
say,
we're just afraid, right? And it's not that we can fully articulate what it is we're afraid of, but fear is real, right? And all those women who stepped away, it's a huge overcoming of fear to be able to do that, right? But
someone said they slept for 12 hours the day they left the job. They
yeah,
slept for 12 hours
yeah,
straight,
yeah.
which is insane.
I mean, when I did it within a day or two, within a very not maybe not a day, within a very short time, my kids were like, "Oh, you're different." I can't.
Wow.
And this wasn't in words. They just said your demeanor. There's something different about you. You just seem better. And I was like, "Wow, was it like that?"
But I think we don't always, again, in the pursuit of this, right? We don't understand the impact of being in a place where you don't feel
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right? Like it's not, um, you're not it's not the right fit, right? So
exactly,
you're there because you've arrived in this role.
exactly.
Everyone's expecting, like, I
Yeah,
think about it even with me, like my family is so proud of what I've achieved in life, so there are all these other pressures of not wanting to disappoint, right?
totally.
I remember, I'm not going to say the company, but I remember a particular role I was in. Lucy, when I tell you my hair was falling out in clumps, this is how much the job was affecting me. And my hair was falling. I don't mean like my hair was coming out. It was like this. And at some point I was just like, for what now? What's this now? let's be done with this.
Yeah,
Like, no job is worth that,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, it had a big impact. First of all, fear, because I realized that the thing that held me back from doing something about
Mm.
it more than anything was fear. And I only learned that after the fact. I started out by making some really key decisions. I was really fortunate that I went out to meet, again, in this particular situation, lo and behold, the other thing that had happened to me was loss of sponsorship, a different sponsor than the one we had in common. So I went out to see, because he had left the organization, and I went out to see him, and he was in sort of figuring out what to do. And the one thing he said to me, which stuck with me, was like, don't make any hasty decision in the first 6 months. And I was like, that's interesting. He said, don't.
Don't make any emotional decisions.
Exactly. He's like, you need to unpack and then figure out what's next.
You need to debrief yourself.
Exactly.
Mm.
So I thought, oh, that's good advice. So then I decided that, okay, first of all, for the first few months, I was going to just decompress, just take care of myself.
Yeah.
And then I started walking religiously, religiously, like daily walk. I've always liked to walk, but this was really sort of a every single day.
Mm.
And I'm a prayerful person, so I prayed as I walked, but that was what I do. But I also said to myself that while fear was out, I wanted more joy.
Joy.
And one of the ways I said I would recognize joy was that while I was in this place and I was trying to figure things out, I said to myself, I will celebrate with anyone who is celebrating. I wanted to recognize other people's joy every single time it came up. If they cared to share it with me, if they
Mm.
cared to invite me, whatever it was, I was going to prioritize being part of joyful experiences, even if it wasn't about me. That's fine. And the blessing that came out of that was the fact that, well, if you know people, that that multiplies the number of times you experience joy, right? Because you're not just dependent on your own ability to be joyful, but there. So then I dug in and I went back to sort of my career background and looked at what are the career things I'd done most recently. Um, whether it was in telecommunications or financial services, what do I want to do? And refreshed a lot of my knowledge. I even went back to some former colleagues and like, what's going on in the industry? What's going on? Tell me what this is about. I cannot say enough the importance of coaching, which we talk about a lot. Went back to coach, and I was like,
Shout out to
yeah,
Maggie.
yeah. Shout out to Maggie. Look, this is who I am. This is and that was so helpful to have um, a voice that knew me well enough, or still knows me well enough, to remind me of what I'm capable of, not be the voice. Because I've had situations where mentors, especially men, were just so disappointed. They're like, "What? How could you do that?" Where she was like, yeah, now you're going to move into the best thing for you. Now let's do this properly,
Absolutely.
right? Completely different voice in my ear. So while I wanted to navigate and figure out what was important for me professionally, this idea of success to significance, the way I nailed it was I started having a few lunches, especially with senior women that I know, and some of them just to share with them that, look, this is where I am, and deal with the idea of when people say, "What are you doing now?" We don't have an answer. You're thinking you're supposed to have an answer. Well, guess what? These people gave me the total freedom to say, "Don't know. I'm trying to figure it
But
out."
no.
you know and one of them, a bit more senior to me in terms of her career span, was like, "I have something for you. You need to read this book. It's helped me so much." And I think that's another thing we need to keep doing, sharing with each other. So she recommended,
Sharing honestly with each
honestly,
other.
and she
Yes.
shared things that I didn't realize she had experienced, but it really spoke to me. And then she said, "You read this book. It's called Halftime. Just read it and
Hmm.
see what
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think." And in reading that book, amongst several others, I realized that what I needed was a new framework, a new framing for what significance meant to me in all aspects of my life. So I kid you
Hmm.
not, all of what this journey led me to was literally writing a strategy paper for my life.
For yourself.
Right?
Yes.
Because we write them for companies all the time.
All the time. All the time, girl.
How many strategy
All
papers
the
haven't you written? And I'm like, well, hold
time.
on a minute. Where's my strategy paper?
And yet you're just there floating around aimlessly.
So I wrote down that strategy paper for every single aspect of my life, not just my career, because I wanted to understand what mattered to me, what significance looked like. And in that strategy paper, as part of what I mentioned about the bold new normal, I started, but now it's allowed me to take it to a whole new place. There's different aspects of your personal life, your friendship, which I wrote down right down to the level of detail of what I wanted from my friendships and how I wanted to enjoy my
Hmm.
friendships and how I didn't want them to be an afterthought. I wanted to be, front and center, not the thing I do if I have time. It's the thing I make time for. That's a personal choice. Other people may say that's not their choice, that's a personal choice. But that's what that time really did for me. That it wasn't just a decompression, it was a how do you repackage and move forward in a way that you can persist with moving forward, because the different elements are clearly articulated, and at any point in time, if one element isn't going as well as you'd like it to be, you can course correct but recognize all the others that are going well. And it
Yes.
also allowed me to articulate the kind of organization I wanted to work for and start looking for it.
I think this is okay. You are dropping some diamonds today, so I want to just touch on two things before we move on, right? Which is one for because let's be honest, you were able to take time out because you were able to take the time out.
Yes.
So you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What do we say to people who may not be able to make that same decision that you've made to take a time out, right? And just sort of reframe your life,
Yeah.
sort of reorganize yourself. What should they be doing
Yeah.
if they find themselves in an organization that is clearly not the right fit for them? They're unhappy, but as you said, there's fear. What's next? What can I do? What should they be doing?
Yeah. I think one piece of advice before I delve into that specific is that a goal that everybody should have in their career is getting to the point of sufficient financial freedom that allows your choices and decisions not to be dependent on where the next meal is going to come from.
I swear that is an episode
I'm
because
telling you.
no, listen. I'm gonna pause for a minute here because no, I had a conversation on a podcast just recently on an episode around salary negotiation, and it's just sort of my entry into the discussion around financial independence because a lot of times we link our financial independence to our partners, right? My mother, God bless her, I love her so much. I remember when I was really silly and young, my mom had said to me, and maybe I was in my 20s, and one of my girlfriends, Tanique, had bought an apartment. And I was just like, what? Who is buying an apartment at the age of 20 something? Like, I'm too young, mom, and I'm waiting because I don't want to buy a place before, my husband. And I swear this woman looked at me like I was crazy. First of all, she must have, God bless her. I don't know how she deals with me, but she must have looked at me at the time like I had two heads. And she was like, let him meet you with your house and then you'll figure it out, right? You don't need him for the house. Like when he meets you, you should have it. And then you guys can have a discussion
Yeah.
from that point. So this idea of financial independence so that you're not tied to a person, a company is such an important
It's so
point
important.
because this is what keeps us in situations that we have
Brilliant.
no business being in, whether it's work
Absolutely.
or marriage or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think that everyone needs to make that a goal. And it doesn't mean that as you make what it means is that every time you make progress in your career, it doesn't mean that all the net new income you have to
You
spend.
have to
You
spend.
right?
I
And
don't
I'm,
understand though.
exactly. And I'm not even just talking about having headroom about, oh, next I've saved 6 months of salary. If you can go
No.
beyond that, you need to
Yes.
have a plan where you have inflows that you can comfortably live on, whether you have to go to a place of work in the morning or not, because that's freedom. And that is a freedom that has to be part of your goals and your target to build up over time. So that's a piece of advice. And I hope whoever's listening takes this on board, whatever your means, make that part of your goals.
If
Um,
you make one CD, save half of it.
exactly.
Please.
Exactly. Okay.
Please.
You don't have the latest shoe that everyone has. So what? Do you have
Yeah,
shoes
don't be like
today?
me buying shoes every day, please.
You can afford to. So that's a broader piece of advice. A very specific about people who may not have, let's be realistic, not everyone is in a situation where they can step away. You need to give yourself time to step away. And what I mean by that is that I don't mean leave the organization regardless. I'm saying if it's a weekend you can carve out and go away, a series of weekends you can carve out. If it's holiday you can book and carve out. Just make time for this activity.
Mm-hmm.
Make time for it because again and I love your terminology about forward motion. Even if it takes you a series of weekends or a series of holiday dates or a series of whatever series of time to get there,
Mm-hmm.
you will get there. You may not have the full block like I took, but you may be able to do it over, I don't know, 6 months of weekends or a year of weekends or, a 3 week holiday, a 1 week holiday. Just make the time to refocus, replan, relook at what it means to be significant for you, and then translate it into an action plan. Don't just think about it. Don't just write it down, but you must write it down. Then figure out what are you going to do about it.
Yes.
Do the work. Don't sit back and hope that without doing the work, the situation will change. You need to be intentional. It's not magic. Magic is not going to show up. Sorry.
There's no magic. There's no magic here at all.
Magic is not coming for you. It's not coming. Right? Create your own magic.
No, okay, but Lucy, yes, I agree. There's no magic. But I speak to a lot of women who maybe I mentor as a one off, and they're very like, I'm just going to pray about it. I'm just going to pray about it. And I want you, because you're a person of faith.
Yes.
But I want you to sort of speak about what role that plays in your life and how
absolutely
right. But it's not the only thing that you rely on in terms of making the changes. And I think this is also a very important point to make. It's important to you, it has its role, but you don't solely rely on that, right? Yeah. Because a lot of times I speak to women like, I'm just going to pray about it. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. I'm like, girl, God wants you to also do your part as well.
He doesn't want you have to do that you do. So the first thing I'll harp on about anyone who's listening is that, look, if you're a person of faith like me, spend time to actually study the scripture for yourself, right? If I want to get good at engineering, I will study engineering. If I want to get good at marketing, I'll find the marketing. But I'm not going to sit there and say it will just drop in my head. Right. That's the fact of life. And the thing goes for this journey of faith, we've got to study it. And so by being a student of it, I'm able to speak to this point. The thing that has fascinated me more than anything in the Bible is that every single time there was personal responsibility, the people had to take action.
Of course.
I have not come across an example yet where God's like, you're going to do something great and amazing. You just stay in your bedroom and it doesn't work like that. And I give specific examples. Look, Esther found herself in a position where her entire nation's future was dependent on her. And she did pray, but she prayed for courage, for favor, for strength, for the action she was about to take.
Exactly.
She wasn't praying and saying, we'll just stay here, we'll just pray, you sort it out, tell us what it's
about. And wait for it to come to me.
She's like, we have prayed, my girls and I, because she found her girls. My girls and I, we've prayed about
her infrastructure.
Exactly. Honestly, she went to her infrastructure. Her girls around her, her uncle, everyone's like, you all be praying, you all be supporting me. Literally, that was like, support me. And then she was like, these are the rules of engagement. And I know I'm flouting a rule of engagement here, but I have the courage. I'm going to go and do this because I believe that we have prayed on it, but now I need to take action. But even with that action, that she knew that she was not breaking a rule, but she was kind of circumventing, she did it in a way. This is when now she brought her character and her own self to it and said, okay, first we're going to wine and dine. Then we're going to have a conversation. And then eventually I will get the king to the conversation I want to have with him and tell. She acted throughout.
Sure.
Why didn't she just keep praying with her girls? Right? And I can unpack this in I have so many examples. They're all, look, even when people had manna, why didn't the manna in the wilderness appear in the pots in there? They were told to get up in the morning
and go get it.
And I'm like, that manna could have been in the bedroom. But it wasn't.
Some work had to be done, right?
And equally, God could have said, I'm giving you next 6 months of manna. No, today you go and get the manna you need. Today, you wake up and go and get your food. Yes. And tomorrow you wake up and go and get your food.
Get it again, yes.
So again, faith is not magic. Faith is more practical than sometimes we allow credit for. And this is why studying the scripture is so important, because at every single stage, there was a requirement that people understood what was expected of them. Yes, prayed about it, but then took action, then moved forward. And then we can go on and we can spend the whole time talking about it. But please, 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 anybody who is a person of faith, absolutely pray. It's foundational. But know that prayer changes you because it gives you the confidence and the assurance to
The
move
energy,
forward.
the strength.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that strength and energy you need to make use of. You've got to move with it. Please don't sit back and just say, I prayed about it. When you're praying about it, please don't pray like it's magic. Pray for answers, for guidance of how to navigate and how to move forward. That's what we're required to do.
So when I think about your story, I mean, and again, like huge successes, sometimes very low lows, and that's what the impact has been for you. What has that meant for the people around you?
Oh,
You know,
gosh.
marriage, husband, children. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because when we talk about these journeys, we're talking about the impact it's having on us. But there's a whole host of people around you. I remember, uh, even for me on my career journey, sometimes my ex-husband would say to me, I'm not one of your workers. Don't talk like that here. you know, because you're having to make that transition from coming back to work into the house. So there's a lot of impact in terms of when you decide to go on this journey, how it impacts you, and then how it impacts your
Absolutely.
relationship, your marriage, the people around you. Do you want to talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit? Yeah.
Look, I always remind people that, particularly if you're someone who has chosen to get married, the most important decision you're going to make is who that person is.
So
Um,
pause and say it again, please.
the most important decision you're going to make is a person you choose to marry.
It is a very practical decision, please.
Yes.
It is a
And
very
that's the
practical
next
decision.
bit I'm going to touch on because
Thank
for us,
you.
the
Please,
practicality
please.
was conversations about attitude to money. Where do you want to live? What are your ambitions in life? Where do you want to go? What are your expectations for any future family? That level of practicality, I'm telling you, was
Yes,
the depth of the
yes.
conversation because it's all well and good to be sort of emotional and, oh, I met this person.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's so amazing. He's 6 foot tall.
Right? But
Big smile.
behind all of that is real life. Real life.
Can't eat his smile, though. Let me tell you.
I'm telling you, real life, right? And in that conversation for a woman, you're looking for will that person is are we aligned and will that person support my hopes and dreams? But don't forget that they also need your support
Have,
in
yes, they
that
have their own
do it.
their own dreams and
Right?
aspirations as
And
well.
so for me, this is a really important part of my journey from right from the beginning, and being able to be aligned and not just be supported, but recognize that as I made sacrifices, he was making sacrifices as well, right? The sacrifices are on both sides because if you're ambitious, then you're going to give extra time. I remember in one of my previous companies, we did. I was working for the CEO of the continent, and we at one point we were on the road for 2 weeks
Hmm.
going country to country to country. I'd left my whole family and they just didn't see me for two. And we were
Yeah.
working so nonstop that at one point I didn't even know what day of the week it was. I was just up and working and that was it. So one is the choice of the person and recognizing that it's a two-way street, but you've got to have the practical conversations and about what the future should look like and work to it. Two is recognizing the sacrifices that get made. And I've talked specifically about my husband, but also the sacrifices of your broader family, with parents, siblings, children. They for me came to the table to really, really support me, especially in the years, for instance, you and I were working together. But before that and after that, my
Mhm.
children were very young. It meant that I had to rely a lot on not just care that I paid for, but having my mother be there to supervise,
Mm.
my
Yeah.
sister be there and supervise. So again, recognizing that family not only were supporting me, but were also making a sacrifice of not having as much of my time because I was busy. Um, I think what's been interesting for me to watch is my children growing up and seeing how the different phases of me have changed with them. So when they talk about their impressions of me as young people, and I'm like, really? That's what you thought? So it's really interesting. They'll be like,
Wow.
the impression, they were like, we always knew when we were coming home because it was the sound of your shoes and your heels. Right? I'm like, oh my goodness, this was a thing.
Time to go do my homework.
Right? Or I remember one time, I kid you not, and this was when we were working together, the younger one, I was walking him to school and I'm dressed for work, drop him to school and go to work. And he goes, you're embarrassing me. I'm like, what? So your shoes are making so much noise.
Killer. Wow.
And you know, in that moment, you're thinking, you do realize I'm someone's boss, right? You do,
Like, what?
you do realize that there are people who actually think that it's good to have me around, and now I'm embarrassing you, you know? Or another one I think of is, you know, my oldest son one day came to me, he's probably about 8 years old, 9 years old, and he came and he said, wow, I used to think you know everything. Now I know you don't. So
So he's just so brutally
I
honest.
know.
Honestly,
So
that's
there's
so
that element
cool.
of the humbling element of it, that is the reminder every day to keep your feet on the ground and know that you, especially in their lives, you're a person. But then there's
Hmm.
the flip side of um, you getting into conversations where you think you can move the dial like you're at work. And you can just say, these are the objectives, this is what we're going to achieve, and you're
This
just
is,
gonna,
yeah, let's go, please. It's not
right? And there were times when I did that. I'll be honest, and it fell, not only fell flat, caused more friction than was necessary. So sometimes it's really hard to recognize the off switch, and
Yeah, because you're always on, right? I mean, especially as a CEO, it's a 24-hour job, to be very honest. It's not as if, you can walk into your house and be like, okay, that's it, guys. Don't call me for the rest of the day. I'm done. You're still
exactly,
on,
you're still on.
right?
And
Yeah,
so having to pivot in the moment, just when it sometimes was really hard, and it
it's
created
difficult. Yeah.
some friction. So look, it's nice to say this now with all the self awareness and the hindsight of what's already happened. But the truth of the matter is that in the moment, several of those moments are really hard.
But
Um,
what do you say to women? Again, I'm thinking of women who are probably our age,
mhm.
who have probably done what you're talking about, right? So they've had the conversations, and it's all well and good when you're 25 and you're like, hey, I'm gonna, my ambition is to become CEO of 30. Let's say
Yeah,
30, right? So you're talking to your partner and you're like, my ambition is to be this, right? And they're like, yes, that's an amazing ambition, girl. I am with you. I love you.
because they're not there yet.
You're not there. It's a dream. You know what I mean? And then you're climbing. It's happening. You do your check-in at
Yeah,
40. Hey, things are heating up. Remember we said this, and
yeah,
they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Not with as much vim, but
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you get there and it's just like a complete collapse, right? Because of course, whatever you thought the job was going to be, it's never exactly as you thought, right? So
Exactly.
there's no way to predict how that job will manifest. You talked about traveling for 2 weeks at a time, or the late hours, or whatever, or the fact that maybe you're in the newspapers every day, whatever. There are all these different ways in which you cannot predict that your
Yeah,
job will manifest. And now, he's kind of like, I didn't sign up for this. What do you do in those kind of situations? I guess is another question that
yeah.
perhaps women have, and are probably going through.
Going through. So anyone who is making that progress, I'd say number one, keep talking, keep the communication going.
Mm,
You've got to keep going as you're making the progress and make the person feel like they're on the journey. But someone else may be listening and thinking, well, it's too late now. I'm already there. I've made the progress, and now it's turned into
right.
the thing that I didn't expect. So the first thing I would say is that again, go back to communication. Find time and ways, not communication where you want to be heard, but listening for the other person for what
Yes.
they are experiencing and going through. Because you may have agreed in the beginning that this was a path you wanted to go on together, but the reality is that you have lived most of that path yourself,
Yourself.
and they
Sure.
haven't. They've observed, they supported. And so, first is the communication. Really take the time to unpack what they're experiencing, what's going on, and understand what they may be missing, or the thing that's become a gap for them that they didn't anticipate would be a gap. What is the new gap? I saw a really funny, I think it's funny, today, about a famous American, not today, yesterday, famous American actress, and an ex-partner was throwing shade at her that 30 years ago he left her because she wasn't cooking
She
and
was not a
cleaning.
mother.
I'm like, you don't even have kids together.
Murder.
And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. I don't know what conversation you had with her, but you'd already decided to judge and say that what she was what, and that's fine. It didn't work out for them. But I say that tongue in cheek with a degree of seriousness, which is go back and sit down with the person in that communication, not just to talk, but rather to hear from them what is the gap and what's missing for them, and then
Yeah.
try to collectively as a partnership re-strategize. Maybe the old
Yes.
strategy isn't what, or you didn't even have a strategy, you just kept going. Now you need to go back to the table and say, what is the strategy we're going to create to help,
Together.
exactly, to
Mhm.
help us succeed in this together and help support our partnership, not because of my ambition, that my ambition actually can be part of us being this partnership as well. But I think that's what tends to happen more often than not, is the communication breakdown leads to, you're just unreasonable, you just don't understand what and remember, in these positions, they're stressful, they're
Of
exhausting, there's
course.
so much work to it. So focus on that, communication bridge, understanding and creating a plan. And the other thing I would add to Chase, I've seen so many women, and I've sometimes done this, where they're very senior, they're very successful, and yet they want to do everything else 100% as well.
C'est ne pas
And
possible.
exactly,
Ce n'est pas
right.
possible.
And I
Ouais.
remember so well, a few years before you and I started working together, I had a boss, and I was he had called me into a meeting on a Saturday, and I remember that day that my food got burnt, whatever. And I was just telling him about how hard the business had needs, and he looked at me like, "What? You haven't outsourced anything yet? Like you're not
Exactly.
you're doing all that yourself? Like,
The queen of outsourcing.
what is wrong with you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, you have a
I don't
point,
have to do this.
right?" And yes, I had childcare, but I just, and then my life changed after that realization,
Yes.
because
Yes.
it freed me up to do other things with the family that didn't it have to be this particular thing every single time.
Mm.
So please don't feel as though, and this plea is to women listening, don't feel as though outsourcing anything makes you less than,
No. Makes you better than.
right?
Seriously.
Yeah,
It just makes you you can show up in a place that is more joyful
exactly.
when you don't have all these stresses. I think
Exactly.
is the
Focus on
point.
the things that really value add for you and your family and your partner, and make sure that in those areas you're able to make time. And the things you can outsource them.
Yes. So every one thing that's coming through in our conversation, and I just have two more questions for you before we wrap up. But you absolutely have to have a strategy for your life. I know it sounds really basic, but it's the one thing that I think many people just ignore, right? So we're really good at going into organizations and being clear about what the strategy should be for my function, or what the strategy should be for the organization or for people or whatever. But we don't put that same sort of effort into planning our careers, our lives, our family dynamics. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So I think what I'm hearing from you is around the intention that we have.
Totally.
That same intention we put into our ambitions for work is the same amount of intention that you have to put into your family.
Totally.
And the same intention you put into applying for this job to be this is the same intention you have to have in terms of what's next. It's
Totally.
not gonna, as you said, your word was magic. I love this word. There's no such thing as magic, right? Like we have to have strategies around
Yeah.
all of it. Okay, I'm going to switch gears because this is something that I know is really near and dear to your heart, which is the Executive Women Network.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you started a few years ago. And I also want to talk a bit about the Bold New Normal as well. So these are two platforms. You started the Executive Women Network quite a while ago, a few
Yes.
years ago. What was the gap that you saw, and why did you decide to do it, and where do you see it in the next few years as well?
Absolutely. That's an awesome question. So this goes back to, gosh, we started working on this 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're coming up to our 10th anniversary. And, you and I have talked a lot about coming into CEO roles, and now you talk a lot about infrastructure and support. And at the time, when I was CEO in Ghana, there were a number of women who were other CEOs, and we found that every time we went to like business meetings, networking opportunities, we found each other. However, many of us showed up, we found each other to talk to each other, and then that evolved into being able to call each other and say, "Hey, this is going on. What do you think? How can you help?" And as we did that more and more, we started to ask ourselves the question that what's happening to all the other women, all the other
Mm,
professional women? If they needed to call someone today, who are they going to call? Especially if they don't work with the person in their same
sure.
organization, right? Then who are they going to? And that was sort of the start, the seed thought that came for us that said, why don't we create something? Because there wasn't a professional women's body. All the bodies were about a particular profession, the lawyers, the engineers, the marketers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But when you
Mm-hmm.
just come because you're all women and you want to succeed, you just want to keep growing, and so you want to have diversity of who is in there. Some will be corporate, some will be entrepreneurs, but they're
Entrepreneurs.
there because they all want to move forward and support each other. And so that was really the genesis of it. And we're very intentional that this was about empowering women. This was about supporting women, really, and this was about helping women really get ahead. We were very intentional, and it really starts with that empowerment piece that says you have agency. How things go for you, you're able to shape that.
Mm,
Back to the intentionality. Let's support you to do that, so that you get ahead. But start from the point that you have power in this story. It's you're not just there for it to happen to you. So we spent close to a year, about 10 months, just working after work. We close from work, meet up, and just talk
wow.
about what should this organization look like? What should it be constitutionally? How should it shape? How should it, really, and we did the work hands on ourselves, as in even like setting up the social media accounts. I was there setting up social media accounts, and someone was doing registration and so on. And then we started to write to women. When we got to a point of launching, again, we wrote letters to various women and said, please come along on this journey. This is what we're thinking. And so we've been going for almost 10 years now. And what's been remarkable is that we've moved way beyond the we need to invite women to women coming to us. And we're
Mm,
beginning to get women also join who are not even based in Ghana, which is great. And we provide these platforms and opportunities for women to work together and grow, but also to engage other communities. So, for instance, we do CSR. We've engaged
okay.
underprivileged girls. We have a program right now running in northern Ghana where we call Elevate, and we're giving them skills and mentoring. So it's also given a channel for these women to give a lot from our own resources. And that's the other thing that's baffled people.
Wow.
They're like, do you have some agency or some foreign aid? We're like, no, we raise our own
Wow.
money because we feel we also have agency and power to make a difference in women's lives. But I tell you what's really important, I want to the point I want 2 points I want to stay with whoever's listening. One is we run it as we run it as you would run a professional institution, even though obviously it's registered as a charity. What I mean by that is that, for instance, we're very transparent. We'll have an AGM and
Oh,
transparently tell all the
wow.
women this is the money, this is the data, like that level of detail. We get lots of the other women to be involved and to run things. So that's point number one, the transparency, because we want women to see that even as women's organizations, we can be very
It's
professional
still very
and
professional.
very
Yes.
structured. The second thing I would say is that as founders, we ran it for the first few years, and we're like, no, we're not going to run an organization that's going to be limited by what we know and what we think. And so now most people who come into the organization don't even directly know that we founded it. In fact, I had someone write to me the other day and go, "Oh, nice to meet you, Lucy. I see that you've been involved in some of the things that EWN is doing." I just laughed like you're laughing. I'm like, yeah, I've kind of been involved. Let me explain.
Just a little bit.
Exactly. So we've kind of stepped to when we play more sort of an advisory to kind of board position. And then Lisa, the chairwoman, current chairwoman, isn't a founder. This is probably, is she like the second chair we've had who isn't a founder? We have a management exco who are not founders, but we do that intentionally so the
Mm.
organization can grow with the ideas that are more, that are current, that are relevant, and evolve beyond our capacity.
Yeah,
And it's
and also your initial thinking, right?
exactly right,
Right.
because otherwise
Mm,
you limit it and you restrict it. And if you want this to
mm.
become an organization that persists beyond ourselves, and I think you and I agree on that, we need to set up institutions, organizations that are not just about us if we want them to really grow. I mean,
Absolutely.
when we have a conference, the amount of money this organization is able to raise, I'm like,
Wow.
and I'm telling you, it's not because I signed the letter. I'm not signing any letter,
Not even, yeah.
right? Because it's able to now, it's credible enough that when people hear and see the name, they're like, oh,
They want
yeah,
to be
yeah,
a
we want
part
to
of
be part of this. So this is a really important, I've seen so many women's careers grow. Women themselves talk about what they have got from the organization, new opportunities, the same way men do for each other, right? We're not on the golf course. Right, we're not at every
it.
late night session because we can't always be there, but we can
Yep.
still be there for each other. We've seen women's businesses grow, so that's an encouragement I give to anyone who is willing to join. But also, maybe in your where you find yourself, you may not be in a position where you think this is for you. You can also start something that helps other women get ahead.
Absolutely.
You know,
You and I have talked about this a lot, where I think we definitely have to rethink what we describe as women's support for each other, right? Because the game at this level, particularly, is very different to what we perceive. You know what I mean? I
very
think we talk about sponsorship, we talk about network, but it's so much more than that. And
totally,
so we have to be able to replicate creating an environment where we can allow women to have those same level of support that the men give to
yeah,
each other. And that's not to say that the men are not giving support, but it's also around, as you said, creating this infrastructure that allows us to have it as well,
totally.
and that it gives us a leg up, especially as you are, you're going
Mhm.
much more senior positions. It's really important to have that network. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it also means that we're finding ourselves in a position where we're sort of the voice of more and more women more broadly. So, for instance, when
Mm.
the current vice president, first woman vice president of Ghana, was running for when she was a candidate on the ticket, she actually invited the network to meet with her
Yeah.
and said, what do you think women need more? What should I be thinking about? What should I be doing?
Mhm.
And there's power in organizing, coming together and expressing yourself to the incoming vice president means that you carry a collective voice and give her input from this organization of women.
And helping to shape policy, and why not? You see? And
Exactly.
why not?
So this is extremely important. So that's EWN. Um, hmm. The bold new normal is an interesting one because we've talked a lot about intentionality and we've talked a lot about action.
Hmm.
And for me personally, the bold new normal brings those two things together. Because been a consistent series of get the thing done and build on it and build on it and build on it and build on it and build on it. So for me, the genesis was really mentoring and guiding young people and having a
Hmm.
voice for them. And this mentoring, guiding, really speaking to them in terms of their need to create their prosperity, which covers everything, every aspect of life, and we've touched a lot on
Yes.
that, is that writing and speaking is what really led to this book, The Bold New Normal. And when I always tell people that it was published 6 years ago, so 2019. And I always say to people that honestly, when I was writing to young people, I was writing to mentor them. I wasn't starting off saying, unless it's a book, I won't do it. But then it was in saying that, in staying the course and consistently and persistently writing, which I've done since 2014, that
Mm.
ended up in a book in 2019. And as within 2 to 3 years, I thought, actually, we need a platform bigger than a book, because I was hearing from all these people, which then evolved into this conference, which is now in its fourth year.
Hmm.
So this is the fourth one we're doing this year. And then, of course, subsequently building on that, I had a number of people go, no, but Lucy, we need to hear more than a conference. We need to hear bits, what's going on in between. And that
Yeah.
became
Yeah.
the podcast. And then I had people go, well, it's all well and good that this is in English, but we need it in another language. And now it's been translated into French, and we're going to launch it in the next 2 months. So
Fantastic.
I say to people that sometimes if you have an idea, you don't know, and I know you have one such idea, and I know you'll share more detail when you're ready.
Obviously,
Sometimes we
yeah.
have an idea, and it's so much, it burns in us so much that we don't know all of the picture, but we have to start acting on bits of the picture we
Start.
can see.
Yes.
And the more you act on the bits of the picture that you can actually see, the more other bits will become clearer, and the right people will come along and partner with you. Because all this journey that I've
Absolutely.
described, I had people helping me. Even the French translation, I had someone just come to me and go, I will translate it for you. She didn't
Wow.
know all the conversation that I had had with people telling me to do it. She showed up and went, I believe in this. I will
This
do
is
it.
this is
This is
necessary. Yeah.
necessary, right?
Yes.
So it's when you start that other people come along, and then it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And look, my goal and my ambition is really simple, Uche. We come from a continent that we love. We know that Africa has potential, but we also
Mm.
know that there's so much suffering, there's so many gaps, there's so many things that need to be better. And it starts with the people. And you and I have this opportunity to sit on, platforms like your podcast and talk about our individual journey
Yeah.
and our stories. Why can't that be replicated more? Why can't more people go on their own journey, which doesn't have to be like yours or mine, but one that leads them to a prosperity that's all their own?
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
all that my ambition is with that. We need a continent where people really feel they have the right opportunity to thrive, then they can go off and take the action to realize that.
They need to. I love that. And I think, again, it just comes from, you and I share this passion for the continent.
Yes.
Um, just having worked and lived here over the last 20 years, every day you wake up every day just excited about the impact that you can have as an
Yes.
individual.
Yes.
And, I think we can never take that for granted. And it's very important to share our stories, our experiences, and, share our ability to help shape
Yeah.
what the next set of leaders will look like. So, on that note, what are your parting thoughts to the next set of leaders or the leaders who are listening to us today? Because we have such a wide audience,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
What's your advice? What are your last words
So I'll speak to
for
both
the people
audiences.
listening? Mhm.
For the first audience I'll speak to, which is people like us, I would say to them, be like Uche. And what I mean by that, let me be very specific.
You're hilarious.
Be willing to be the shoulders that other people get to stand on,
Hmm.
right? If you have decided to take on that leadership mantle, think about your shoulders and make them broad enough for others to stand on. Because our goal as leaders is to ensure that that next generation goes much further than we go. They
Hmm.
can't come up to just our level. And I know
Yeah.
that a lot of the work that you're doing is in that direction of how you get people to really, and we do that by getting them to see some of the things we saw later, see them sooner.
Or too late.
Exactly. Too late, and recognize and move. So I say that with
Hmm.
all seriousness, that those shoulders that you're lending to all of those people who you want to see grow further, that needs to happen more and more. And then to the younger people, I would say that you've got to decide for yourself intentionally who are the voices you're going to listen to,
Mm.
who is in your ear, who gets in your head, because that decision is really going to determine how far you're going to get. Are you going to go with the people who say it's not possible, it's never going to happen, forget about it, you should be content and satisfied where you are?
Exactly.
Or are you going to be with the voices that say that in spite of what you may see around you, better is possible, more is possible, you have what it takes, you can drive this. Yes, it's a journey that takes time, and you and I have shared
As
many
you
of that
said,
information,
yes.
but it's not an impossible journey. So, younger people, younger leaders, younger listeners, decide for yourself and stick with the voices that you're going to listen to that really shape that future for you.
Wow. Now, on that note, I have nothing to add, Lucy. This is the perfect way to end. Lucy, thank you so much for sharing today all of your stories and for your advice. I think, as you said, strategy, very important. Choose carefully who you're listening to. And to our fellow leaders, open yourself up to be shoulders for others to move forward.
Absolutely.
Lucy, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Always a joy to spend time with you. Thank you.
And see you soon.
Very soon. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Don't Let the Smile Fool You podcast. I hope you found it really, really interesting. But more importantly, I hope you're still smiling. See you soon.